Behold the 2026 C8 ZR1 from its second year of production and newly updated. We'll get to that in a moment. And bask in the glory that is the 1991 C4 ZR1 from its second year of production. But which of these legendary ZR1s is the best when you consider performance, handling, daily use, and most importantly, pure driving enjoyment? Any comparison between these two cars starts with their spectacular power plants. Unusual for Corvettes, each of these engines contain 4 cams and 32 valves. No old school push rods here. Both engines have roughly the same displacement. The C4's LT5 measures 5.7 liters, while the C8's LT7 is actually a bit smaller at 5.5. But because the LT7 sprouts 2 of the world's biggest turbochargers, this rocket delivers a staggering 1,064 horsepower. For a regular guy like me, the insane output of the C8 ZR1 kind of boggles the mind. So let's put that in context so we can understand with the 1991 C4 ZR1, which had huge power output for the day at 375 horsepower. However, if you want to equal the power of that one C8 ZR1, you got to add another early C4 ZR1 plus a base engine LT1 C4. All 3 of these C4's combined power output roughly equals that one C8 ZR1. That thing really is all that and a bag of chips. But power isn't everything, especially out here on a public canyon road. And while I have driven at least one Corvette from every generation, including a few base C8s, I'm definitely not used to new supercars such as this beast. So even if I'm in over my head with this thing, it's time to strap in and see what happens. C8 ZR1. This is my first ever press car. I am so excited. Basically, a press car is when a manufacturer like Chevy just drops off a car and lets you drive it and review it for like a week. So that's what's happening here. So thank you to Chevy and thank you to you guys for making this possible, because I would not be here without you guys. As someone who's driven every generation of Corvette, I've been extremely curious to see what the new King of the Hill is like. Unlike most cars with 4-digit horsepower figures, all this power is going only to the rear wheels, not all-wheel drive. This particular car doesn't even have the really sticky cup, basically track tires that are optional. It just has normal Michelin Pilot Sports. Now granted, they're pretty wide, they're probably as wide as my forearm, but they're not as sticky as you would maybe think. So I'm gonna wait till the tires are warm before I really push it. Now, one option that I'm really glad that this car has is the Aero Package. It's like 10,000 bucks, but I think it's worth every penny. That includes some really cool dive planes in the front, and of course that ginormous rear wing. With the Aero Package, you're looking at 1,200 pounds of downforce, and I'll take every little help I can get to keep this rocket on the road. Plus, the Aero Package looks amazing. One big issue with the C4 ZR1 is that the looks are not that different from the base C4. The only real visual differences was the wider rear end and some really, really tiny badges. This car with the Aero Package, there is no mistaking that it means business. Now, one downside is that the top speed is lowered a bit. Top speed without the Aero Package is 233, but with the spoiler package, because of the added drag, you're looking at an absolutely glacial 225. Man. All right, I got a little bit of straightaway here. Let's give it a little more gas. Holy shit. Whoa. Okay, that is I wasn't even in a low gear, and that was pretty wild. Oh, let's try that again. Okay. I'm gonna start from second gear here. Okay. Wow, that is spectacular. Okay. I'm really out of breath. That thing is terrifying. This is a freaking rocket. 0 to 60 is only 2.3 seconds, which is basically half the time that the C8 ZR1 takes to get to 60 miles an hour. Wild. Jesus. Okay. Man, I sound like Joe Pesci in Lethal Weapon. Okay. That's what it does to you. All right. Wow, okay. From a stop to 85 miles an hour, it produces 1 G of acceleration. So essentially, this thing is faster than falling. If you've gone bungee jumping before, that's probably the closest feeling I can impart, which I have done. I did the GoldenEye bungee jump in Switzerland that James Bond jumps off of. I can tell you, yeah, this is about as thrilling and as crazy feeling as that. Whoa, thankfully the brakes are up to the task. It's got gigantic ceramic brakes, and also as a bonus, they're not even that noisy in day-to-day driving, so great brakes. As a Corvette nerd like myself, I was thrilled to see the glorious return of the split rear window, which we haven't really seen since the 1963 Stingray coupe. It does mean that the rear visibility of the C8 went from bad to terrible. I'll cover this more in the pros and cons of the C4 versus C8 later, but yeah, the rear visibility is atrocious. Okay, so we're gonna turn around and head on back. And you know what? While I'm here, I'm going to take a pause and I can tell you a little bit more about the updates that have happened to this car in 2026. Whew! The updates for the 2026 ZR1 can be found in its new interior, which I found odd because I already liked the C8 interior of old. I'm usually befuddled by the complicated features and interfaces found in new cars, but I found the previous C8 interior to be intuitive and easy to use. And I especially like the long row of tactile climate control buttons that swept down the tall central spine. Well, the new C8 interior eliminates that row of buttons and replaces it with a passenger oh crap handle. It also means the passenger seat has a more open feeling to it compared to the walled off vibe you got in the old design. On the driver's side of the updated interior, a new screen has sprouted to the left of the steering wheel. That, combined with the reorganizing of many other features, does make this new cockpit feel like overwhelming tech overload, at least at first blush. But after a day or so of poking around and configuring the settings to my liking, I ended up digging this Knight Rider vibe, especially once I set the new screen to monitor turbo boost. There's clear attention to detail in places like the careful orange stitching that matches the outside paint color and the matching stripe on top of the steering wheel. Even the removable target top is artfully finished with a swoopy suede pattern. And it's easily the best Corvette cockpit I've ever sat in. But enough about screens and stitching, there's more driving to be done. The sound of the car, it doesn't sound like any Corvette I've ever driven. Not only do you have this flat plane V8, you have these massive turbos. They produce up to 26 pounds of boost, and they're so big that it basically sounds like a turbo diesel. Once the turbos hit, it's just like an added bomb has gone off. Oh my God. I finally reviewed a Corvette that attracts more attention than the C1, which everyone seemed to love when I was parked. But now we have a new winner. The C8 ZR1 attracts crowds like I've never seen. Young, old, men, women, it doesn't matter. Everyone can tell that this car is wild and special. Man, I I've been so focused on the power of this car that I haven't really talked about handling, because honestly, there's not a whole lot to complain about. I mean, so sharp, so smooth, so easy to drive as long as you don't mash the gas when you don't mean to. It has such a tossable, lightweight feel. Huge shout out to the Corvette team for being one of the very few modern manufacturers that seems to give a crap about how much their car weighs. You know, in an age where BMW M5s weigh 5,400 pounds, this car weighs 3,800, a relative lightweight. This only weighs about 300 pounds more than what the C8 ZR1 did, which is pretty reasonable when you consider the Porsche 911 Turbo has gained 600 pounds in that same time frame. The Ford Mustang GT, 700 pounds. The top-of-the-line Mustang GTD, the crazy high-performance one, weighs 500 pounds more than this car does. Tad Juchter, who actually has an insignia on this car, throughout his run with the Corvette, he has always cared about weight, and it really does show. This is the long game why the Corvette went mid-engine. Yeah, you could complain that the Stingray, the base model, doesn't need to be mid-engine. Maybe not, but I mean, there's no way you can get this level of balance, handling, and power in any sort of manageable way without the engine behind the driver. It's just such a fun car out here in the canyons, especially in manual mode. The carbon fiber pedals, you slap them, it goes right into gear. Absolutely crazy. So, do you need a C8 ZR1? Do you need a triple cheeseburger? Why buy Johnny Walker Blue Label when there's Johnny Walker Black? You know, some people, they just want to have the top of the line. What's really crazy though is that what just came out is the ZR1X. Yes, there's another level on top of this. The ZR1X adds another 186 horsepower, I believe, by throwing the E-Ray electric motor in the front. So it's an all-wheel drive hybrid. It's reasonably priced. It's like 15, 20 grand more than this, but it's also 200, 300 pounds heavier. And I just can't imagine that I would enjoy it any more than this, because this to me, it's light, it's raw, much more of a pure driving experience. And what's crazy is the price for the ZR1 is pretty reasonable. I mean, yeah, $200,000 ain't no chump change, but look at it in the context of the other cars that it's running up against. To get this level of performance from the competition, you're spending way more. So once again, even at this level, the Corvette is democratizing speed. It sounds bizarre to call a $200,000 vehicle a great value, but here it is. Now, as good as the C8 ZR1 is, for a normal working class dude like myself, it's hard to comprehend what a sticker price just north of $200,000 really means. But let's measure it against its closest homegrown competitor, that Ford Mustang GTD I talked about earlier, which is less powerful, heavier, and slower. And yet it stickers for $327,000. Putting that in Corvette terms, for the price of one Mustang GTD, you could have this C8 ZR1, an extremely nice base C4 LT1, plus two early ZR1s in great shape. Hey, I love Mustangs too, but I know which garage I'd rather have, especially because these keys allow you to go back in time. We actually have two 1991 ZR1s here with us today. But as I've already driven this blue colored example in my previous ZR1 versus LT4 video, I'll be driving this black one instead. The owner is my friend Kazra, who got this car around 3 years ago after he fell for the ZR1's Mystique. Kaz's car has been well cared for with just a bit over 26,000 miles on the clock. It's stock with the exception of the popular Hybec computer chip for more predictable performance and durability, a slightly lowered suspension, and beautiful rims from a Shelby Series 1. However, the exhaust is stock, which is rare for a C8 ZR1. So let's hop in and head back 35 years. Okay, C8 ZR1. This is the car that made those 3 letters and 1 numeral famous. Yes, I'm aware that in the 70s there was a special racing package you can get, but this is the ZR1 that Chevy was serious about taking on the entire world. You could make an argument that when this car came out, that it was overall the best car in the world. Nothing else could touch its comfort, speed, ease of repair, and reliability. And yes, I said reliability. It broke the record for the 24-hour endurance run at an average speed of 175 miles per hour. This engine has turned out to be pretty darn bulletproof. It's kind of over-engineered, so it's part of the reason why the ZR1 option package did double the price. It was still, just like the new ZR1, a relative bargain compared to anything else that could touch it in performance. The other thing that I love about this car, having a stick shift. And you can heel into downshift unlike other C4s because the proper pedal spacing that it has. I know that the C8's automated flappy pedal is about as good as they come, but you just can't beat the real engagement of a stick shift. Here's a bit of a straightaway. Let's see how she goes. I'm gonna slow down and we're gonna floor it and go. Woo-hoo-hoo! Coming from the C8 to the C4, I feel like I actually have time to think. Like I can be full throttle and I can survey the surroundings and take a moment and appreciate life. Whereas the C8 ZR1, you hit the gas and you're like holding on for life. So yeah, it's a C4, getting in and out, yeah, it sucks with those high door sills, but once you're in, these seats are phenomenal, especially for the era. Actually, I think they're a little more comfortable than the C8s. Now, maybe one thing that isn't quite world-class is the plastic material quality in here. It's fine for the era. That's definitely something that the C8 is leaps and bounds better, but everything is well laid out. It's very easy and simple to understand. This car has an adjustable suspension, which is pretty advanced first time, but this is the first one I've driven where it actually works. Wow, there's a big difference between the performance and tour settings. The suspension is actually pretty soft, very forgiving. In the performance setting, this is still softer than the tour setting on the C8. That thing is very firm. Brakes they're there. It's not the immediate bite that those massive pizza-sized discs of the C8. Overall, the car just feels like friendly, docile. It doesn't quite have that scalpel sharp feel of the C8 ZR1, but it's still a lot of fun. All right, we're gonna turn around and go back. The turning circle of the C4 is surprisingly much worse than the C8. The C8's turning circle is actually really good. All right, back down the mountain we go. Now this car is in great shape. Surprisingly, not many squeaks and rattles at all, which is a big C4 bugaboo. It's actually quite quiet and pleasant, especially with the stock exhaust, which is relatively quiet. One bugaboo that I do feel with the C4, especially jumping out of C8, is the weak structure. I do feel some shakes and shimmies. Whenever it hits a bump, it does deflect a bit, but it is a lot more stable than other C4s I've driven. This just seems to squat and take the bumps around corners a lot better. I think it's because of the rear track being wider than the base C4. That really helps with stability. Oh yeah, look at the corners. I keep on short shifting and I keep on forgetting that unlike most Chevy V8s, this thing loves to rev. Yeah! Woo! And it just sings in that upper rev band. Here we go, I'm gonna do one more acceleration run. Here we go. Oh yeah! I don't care what car it is. If it's got a V8, it's fun to mash the gas and just hear it wail. You got your pop-up headlights. Actually, in the C4, it's even cooler. The headlights are more like tumbling headlights. I'll never get tired of that action. That is just so cool. This is like a nostalgic comfort blanket to me. C4s will always have my heart. My first Corvette was a C4, and the ZR1 is the best of the breed. There's a great ZR1 community out there that is dedicated to keeping these things on the road. And so finding parts, while they can be a little bit expensive, it's not as hard as you might think. Right now, they're a great deal, and I think a future classic, and I don't see these cars ever going out of style because they have that great Radwood C4 look, but yet you can drive them all day long and not get beaten up. It even has good trunk space. That's what's amazing. Supercars of this era were not practical, they weren't forgiving, they were cantankerous, they were unreliable. The C4 ZR1 was the car that changed all of that. Now, do I like it better than the C8 ZR1 after driving it back to back? It is a lot closer than I thought it would be. I'm gonna have to pull over and kind of think about that one. I will tell you that this is a car for the ages, and I think after 35 more years, it'll still be a joy to drive. All right, decision time. Which ZR1 do I think is the best? If you're intoxicated by tire-melting power and pace, then the C8 is the clear victor. Nothing compares to the feeling of those turbos spooling up and catapulting you to warp 9. The exhaust by itself creates enough thrust from launch that it toppled my camera tripod, something that's never happened before. If you want even more open-air excitement, the C8's target top is a snap to remove with just a few levers. The top is made out of lightweight carbon fiber, so it's easy to manage and stow in the back. The C4's target top is a much bigger hassle. Just like all other C4 coupes, the top requires a tool to remove 4 screws to free it. The top itself weighs about twice as much as the C8's, so it's much more difficult to handle. And as I found out with my old C4 coupe, when the top is removed, the already squirmy structure becomes an even shakier affair. Whereas the topless C8 feels just as stiff and capable while you whoosh by with the wind in your hair. So clearly the C8 ZR1 is a much more exciting car, but it's also way more expensive. Nowadays, nice early ZR1s like these can be bought for somewhere in the high 20 to mid 30 grand range. Forget having 2 C4 ZR1s, you actually have 6 of them for the going rate of 1 C8 ZR1. But to be fair, when it was new, the C4 ZR1 wasn't such a screaming deal. Adjusting for inflation, the C4Z stickered at around $155,000 of today's dollars. In that context, the C8Z still seems like a solid value when you factor in its massive performance, tech, and safety advantages over the older Vette. However, despite 35 years of advancements, there are some clear victories that the C4 has over its great-grandson. Surprisingly, gas mileage is one of them. The C4 gets a combined 17 miles per gallon on 91 octane, while the C8 guzzles a combined 14 on pricier 93 octane premium fuel. In performance driving, the C8Z gets even thirstier. During my 265 miles with it, I averaged a sobering 9 miles per gallon. Adding insult to injury, the smaller 18.5 gallon fuel tank left only around 180 miles of fun between stops at the gas station. Despite its big thirst and output, the LT7 looks unimpressively small, dwarfed by the huge rear end that it's housed in. Whereas I think the C4's LT5 stands proud as one of the most beautiful engines ever made, perfectly framed under that awesome clamshell hood. Plus, the C4's engine is way easier to access and repair, even by an amateur mechanic like myself. Now, that won't be a concern for anyone who buys a new C8 ZR1. Despite its exotic firepower, it comes with a 5-year, 60,000-mile powertrain warranty. But looking ahead to 35 years in the future, I expect the C8 ZR1 will be much more of a technical challenge to keep running. When it comes to looking backwards, it's simply no contest. Even without cameras or sensors, the C4's tidier rear and expansive glass make backing up a cinch, whereas the view behind the C8 is about as clear as a politician on a divisive issue. Instead of using your eyeballs to reverse, you're supposed to use the rear view mirror camera system, but it's prone to glare from the engine bay, and it's especially hard to see when the targa top is removed. I also wish the C8 had cameras for the massive rear blind spots, much like the handy cameras it has for the front corners. As it is, reverse or merging maneuvers felt too much like trust falls, which is a bit disconcerting with a car that's so valuable. When it comes to luggage space, a C4 and a base C8 are bang on identical, both totaling 12.6 cubic feet of room. And the base C8's cargo capacity is split into two sections thanks to its very usable front trunk. However, the ZR1 version of the C8 replaces the frunk with a cooling extractor, so it ends up with 30% less cargo space than the C4. And the rear cargo compartment of the C8Z gets absolutely baked from the copious amount of engine heat. That delicious ice cream from the grocery store is going to be a puddle by the time you get home to eat it. Now, if all my nitpicks against the C8 seem to be trivial, mundane, daily driver stuff that shouldn't matter with an exotic car, that leads me to the surprising conclusion that I've come to. Because unbelievably, if I had to choose which car to drive every day, I'd pick the one that's 35 years old. That's because my time with these two ZR1s have revealed their two very different but exceptional missions.
So, my ultimate verdict. Pick the C8 ZR1 if you have the means and you want max attack adrenaline pumping performance, and pick the C4 ZR1 if what you crave is a grand touring car with a healthy dose of nostalgia.
That's my take, but let's hear from you.
Yeah!
I read and respond to every comment I get, and I want to know, what's your favorite ZR1? And what do you think of the new and old versions of this car? I'd like to invite you to check out my other Corvette videos, including one suggested just for you on the screen right now. Be sure to subscribe, and remember, if you have a cool car, get out there and drive.